Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and today I am joined by Mabz from Chalk by Mabz. Hello.
Hello.
And today we are going to be, oh, there's a fluff in the air. Today we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about? Collaborations and
Authenticity.
authenticity. And we're being authentic by the fact that I just screwed up that intro, but we're going to keep it going.
There you go.
So if you don't follow Mabz on Instagram, she is known for her authenticity and just being real, which includes a lot of curse words.
Potty mouth.
And people love her for it. And so it's something that I've been asked about a lot. And I think that it's going to be a really fun conversation. But fair warning, if you have children in the room, put your headphones in because there will probably be a couple F-bombs in here.
I'm not vulgar. I just sprinkle it sometimes. That's all.
She sprinkles it liberally. So maybe, put on headphones if you have kids in the room, or tune out if you don't like curse words. This might not be the conversation for you. But without further ado, I think we should just jump in. So Mabz, before we get going, if you could just tell people who you are, what you do, how we know each other, which is a fun story, and how you got into all of this.
Yeah, so I'm Mabz, which isn't actually my real name. My name is Marie-André Brisson, and Mab is my initials. But unless you can say it in French, it's a little difficult. So I go by Mabz. That's how I introduce myself. I work for myself at Chalk by Mabz, and so I like to say that I'm the hands behind it. I work primarily with small businesses doing glass murals, which consist of mostly florals and lettering. And I do some day of signage too. So those are really the main focuses that I have. And I started off when I got pregnant. So when I had my first son, there was somebody going around on Pinterest doing like weekly chalkboards where she'd have like the fruit or vegetable that her kid was that week.
The size of it, you mean?
The size, yeah. The size that her child was in terms of fruits and veggies. And so I did that with my first son, and then it kind of died off. But I kept the tradition when I got pregnant with my other son. And at that point, I was sharing it like just on my personal Instagram and Facebook and things like that. And I had a friend who was opening a cafe, and she asked if I would do a chalkboard menu for her. So I did that. And then I had a family member ask if I could do a chalkboard menu for them. And then I did that. And I opened an Instagram account and just kind of started posting there instead of on my personal account. And it just kind of grew organically from there. And I started being contacted by people who weren't related to me. So that was like a compliment.
So did it actually start out with mostly chalk? Is that why it's chalked by Mabz?
Yeah. That was my goal. I think when I first started, I thought that I would focus on weekly chalkboards. And then I realized how expensive that would be, and quickly threw that idea in the garbage. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people still think that I only work with chalk. So they haven't seen my Instagram or anything. But the name is deceiving because I do work with chalk. Not so much anymore, actually. But I still love it.
Cool. And so how long ago was it that you started the Instagram account?
So Preston's about to be 3. So it'd be like 3.5 years ago. But I only took it seriously about, we'll say, 1.5 to 2 years ago, when I was like, okay, I need to put some effort into this if it's going to become anything.
So I've never scrolled all the way down to the bottom of your Instagram, which I probably should.
There's some good, bad stuff down there.
But since we're going to be talking about authenticity, I think a good place to start is whether or not you have always been that authentic and real on Instagram. Because like I said at the beginning, for anybody who doesn't know Mabz, she's very real on her Instagram, talking a lot about mistakes and stuff like that most people try and keep quiet on there. But I know that as much as you can try to be real and authentic on Instagram, it's really hard sometimes. And especially when you're first starting out and you're trying to please everybody and you don't want to alienate anybody and you want everybody to like you. So you just try to not I mean, it and usually ends up turning into not acting like yourself. So when you first started out and started taking it seriously, were you always that authentic, or was it a
No,
process?
it was very clean captions. I don't want to say like copying, but I knew how other people spoke and how other people captioned their posts and stuff. So I just kept it clean, and I don't want to say boring, because if that's the type of person you are, it's not that you're boring, but it just wasn't me. It wasn't as liberal as I am now. And I remember, I don't know if it was for a post or a caption, but the first time I wanted to swear, to say fuck, I did it. The first one. We should have a fuck count. But anyways, the first time that I did it, I had reached out to a pod that I was in and asked them what their opinions were and if I should keep my language clean. And all of their suggestions they were very nice about it. They're like, well, you do you, but it could turn people off. And so I guess I kind of like eased into profanities.
Just before you keep going, can you explain what a pod is? Just because I think it's important. Yeah. It's important to the story because it means that they're fellow.
So a pod is they kind of go through waves where people are like looking for pods. I haven't seen as much of them anymore, but it's for engagement. So you get people who are, for the most part, it's always been other letterers, and you like and comment on each other's photos to try and boost engagement. So I was in a pod, and it was with other letterers, and so they knew what it was like.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, you're good. Yeah. So they knew what Instagram was like. We're all trying to get more followers and get more engagement. So they have the same goals in mind. And so when I asked them about it, they were like, but you could turn people off if you do. And so, like I said, I'm pretty sure it was just in a caption. It wasn't necessarily like posting a photo with a swear word on it, which I have done those since. And they kind of suggested against it, but then I did, and then I haven't stopped ever since.
So I think like the tendency, like I said, is when you're first starting out is to just try and please everybody. And you're assuming that by putting a swear word in your caption that people are going to unfollow you. And so it's really hard at the beginning to be yourself and let loose with that when you're trying to grow your following. But I guess you just gradually decided that enjoying what you were doing and liking your captions was more important than having those followers, or how did that kind of change?
I feel like because I tend to speak the way that, or write the way that I speak. So one of the things is that I think online me and real life me is very similar. So that's helpful too, because when I meet people, it's not like I've been putting on a front or anything like that. They'll get what you get online is mostly what you get in real life too.
Do you remember like an exact moment where you were like, screw this, I'm going to stop being polite? And like, do you remember the first time you did something a little bit risky on Instagram and whether or not it paid off?
What's the worst thing that I've done so far? I don't know. I have something that says fuck winter. So that's just straight up swearing. I know that they've offended people when I get phone calls from my aunts saying that I should stop. I should be more polite online.
But there wasn't, so you don't remember an exact moment where you said,
fuck it.
Fuck it.
I don't. I'm sure I could find it. But it was just like a switch in my head, like, okay, this is enough trying to just please people. And it's not like it was getting me anywhere anyways. I think that when I started to be a bit more me and like kind of slowly being more me, and then so it wasn't like an overnight switch or anything, but just kind of testing the waters and then seeing that my engagement, if anything, improved. And I was, I guess, more relatable to people, at least people who are like me and my age and demographic and such. So it was I would assume that it was like a slow roll into transforming into myself kind of thing.
So it actually worked the opposite of what you assume when, you think you're going to be trying to please more people, you're going to get more followers. But when you started
Like
honing in on your own message, then people started actually following you more. And we're going to get into that more in a minute, I know. But
it's not like I knew that my people would find me kind of thing. Like I knew that I would probably not grow as well, or I probably wouldn't get followers or clients or whatever. Like I knew that that was a possibility, and it's still, I'm sure it still happens all the time where people might follow me and haven't seen me swear or heard me swear, and then when I do, they're like, "Oh, this isn't for me." So I'm not everybody's cup of tea.
so I know that you prepared kind of a pros and cons list of being authentic and kind of letting loose on Instagram. So I'd love to just go through those. Maybe we'll start with the pros.
Yeah.
And we can just kind of have a conversation around each of your points, maybe.
Great. I made notes. So pros, first one, more engaged followers. So for that, it's more just speaking in a tone that's not at people, it's speaking to people, I think is something that's good. It's helped others feel comfortable in engaging with me in their normal verbiage, I guess, as well. So that's been a big pro.
Well, and I think just like you said, your people will find you. If you're constantly putting out your own personality and people get to know your personality and they click with it, then of course they're going to follow you and want to see more of what you're doing. It just naturally feels more real and, for lack of a better word, authentic on Instagram. So your people will slowly start to find you. It might happen slower.
It's funny though, because people, like, say somebody introduces me, they do tend to be like, and just so you know, she swears sometimes. Like they're all aware of it. So I guess I've sort of been known to speak very freely, and so that's kind of one of the things that is a main describer of me and my work, I guess.
But you know what? It's not, I wouldn't consider that any different than somebody introducing me and saying, just so you know, Becca tells really bad jokes.
Yeah.
Like it's just a part of your personality. It's just an interesting thing because people like associate negativity with swear words, whereas people associate, I don't know, happiness, I hope, with dad jokes. So like it's just a different part of your personality. But I think everybody kind of has like something like that, and if you don't, then you're not appealing to anybody specific. Like you're trying to appeal to everyone instead of just that small subset of people. So it actually, I think, for sure is a pro.
Thank you. Next thing, I find better suited clients. So I do get a lot of pubs and things like that. So just if we're going to go straight into stereotypes, people who enjoy drinking and people who are a little more vulgar in their day-to-day speech. So of course, I do work with wedding clients and things like that, but I also get clients who are a little less...
A little ballsier.
Yeah, I was going to say less stuffy, but there's nothing wrong with being conservative. But I can get a broader spectrum of clients.
And I think even just within the wedding industry, you probably get the brides who want to do something funny on their wedding signs or like put a curse word on their wedding signs. You meet people that, again, have clicked with your personality and want to work with you for that, which we're always talking about that when you're talking about, how do you stand out from the competition and stuff like that. And the answer is to put your personality into it, and your clients will naturally find the personality they click with.
Yeah, I've done the same for... it's not like I host a lot of workshops, but the ones that I do, I've taken a few lettering workshops, but I also have like swear words and funny anecdotes in those as well. So that, not that there's anything wrong with being very proper or anything, but it's just that one little thing that might set me apart from another workshop.
And I think your workshops, I've seen you do a lot of like bachelorette party kind of workshops, that lend themselves well to that kind of attitude and personality. Whereas
we talk about tits and things like that. So, it's just making fun out of it.
Cool.
I said tits on your interview. I wasn't planning on saying tits. Might as well throw dick in there too, just to even it out for the ladies and the gentlemen.
I am counting your fucks, but I should I start a tab for tits, or
I think that'll be it. I don't know why they would come up again at this point.
Okay, so what's your pro number 3?
So we did talk about this, but there's no disconnect between real life me and online me. So I know that it can be a little disconcerting when you've met somebody who you think will be a certain way online, and then you meet them in person and they're not really the same. And so that goes with, I guess it's different now because you have stories on Instagram, which you didn't always have. So you get to meet fluffs again. You get to meet people in a sense that way, like you're getting the way that they actually speak and their mannerisms and things like that. So by being myself there, and then you meet me in person, it'll be most likely the same person. So that's a bonus. And I've had people say that too, where they've met me and then they're like, oh, you're exactly how I thought you'd be. So I'm like, sweet, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody is hoping that that's how people see them, but it's not always the case.
No,
I've met a lot of people. Social media people can be very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes both ways too. It's like some people are very proper on Instagram, and then turns out they have a huge potty mouth in real life.
Well, it's not just that. It's like I have this one friend whose artwork is very clean and like simplistic and stuff. But then when I met her in person, she was wearing overalls and she had like purple or big like streaks in her hair. Like her hair was really cool. Like she was like a funky looking person, but her work was completely different. So like it can be interesting. It's not always a bad thing, but it's funny how just she wasn't what I was expecting just because of her work.
Yeah.
It was like a fun surprise.
Yeah, well, and like you said, it's not always a bad thing. Like sometimes it's just an interesting element to their brand. But if you're trying to be one person online and you're a completely different person in real life, it's a different issue.
Well, that just comes back to being authentic or not. I feel like some people try to be a little more, cool is the only word that's coming out of my head right now, but they're trying to be like, you can't try to be authentic, you just have to be authentic. And I think a lot of people try to be authentic and it doesn't translate very well because it's forced. So that's when it's weird in person too.
Yeah, it's true. You do a good job of that, where like I hope somebody else watching this saw Mabz's story the other day when you were putting on makeup. You're trying on new makeup.
A highlight, because that was the second time, and it was just, I love beauty bloggers and I'd love to be one, but like I would be an awful one. But I think that's what makes it. I'd be like your average human blogger.
See, I just think like you actually really enjoy doing that stuff, and that's why it comes across as authentic when you do it. And you know, you'll hear people say like, oh, you shouldn't put stuff on Instagram that's not calligraphy related, or like you shouldn't put things that are totally different than the topic because people won't be following you for that and whatever. But like if you're being authentic, it really like comes through, and your stories do. And that one, like I actually sat there like laughing out loud at that one. So,
good. Do you know what? I'm wearing the foundation that I bought today, and I did color choice. I'm proud with it, and it's the lip gloss actually. So.
Well, if anybody's watching, you can find that story on Mabz's highlights.
I'm pretty sure it's called Beauty Blogger. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so there's no disconnect between on and offline. Was there any more pros that you had thought of?
Again, it all kind of just relates, but everything will feel more natural. So it's not feeling, if you're true to your captions, I guess captions is one of the main places where personality will come in. If you're true to your captions, it won't be as forced. I do put effort into my captions. I enjoy writing them, but it's not like
it's not a chore.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not trying to do something. I'm not trying to prove anything.
Well, I mean, I can say from my experience that I always feel a lot of pressure when I sit down to write a caption, because I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I don't want to offend anybody. Second of all, I want it to be really clear so people know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't want to make a joke that somebody won't understand. It's really hard to sit down and have like an original engaging caption when you're worried about all of those things. Whereas I feel like you could sit down and be like, I want to tell a joke that only some people will get because I want those people to find me, you know? And it's just a little bit more enjoyable.
Sometimes though, the enjoyment of writing them, I don't want to say gets in the way of the business aspect, but I did something recently, and I know that if you want to get engagement, you need to often kind of ask your followers a question or something like that. So I get kind of too involved in the caption that I forget about engagement. And so sometimes the captions are just there to be the caption, not to receive anything in return.
And I think there's like a delicate balance there, because sometimes when you aren't asking for any engagement, you're just putting out something that like actually comes from your heart, as cliche as that is, like something that like really strikes a chord with you, and you write a caption about it, that's probably going to strike a chord with your followers too. So you don't have to ask for that engagement. They're naturally going to engage with it.
Yeah. So,
but it only works sometimes. If you do that kind of thing every caption, it doesn't always work.
That goes back to the first thing that I said about the engagement, that there's been a lot of times where I don't expect a post to do very well, but I'm being very true or open about something, and that's when I get a lot of good feedback.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely, there's definitely a balance there. You also see people who are trying too hard to be authentic and constantly putting out things that they think are gonna get people's emotions going, and you can tell that they're just trying to get engagement. So there's definitely it's very easy to see through it. So if there's any advice that comes out to anybody who's watching this, it's like, don't force it. Just find something that you actually want to talk about, and don't try and think of what other people want you to talk about. That makes sense. Yeah. So I know you had also a list of cons, which is probably going to be the more interesting part for people to hear. So let's get into those.
So the first one, people don't take me as seriously. So I think a lot of the times people don't see me as a professional, or don't think that I can be professional. I worked at a children's camp and never swore there. So I can, like, read the room.
You are a mother.
Exactly. I don't ask my kids to like fucking pick up your pants. They're 3. I'm not gonna swear at them.
Just adding another.
Oh, thank you. Another tick. So in a professional setting, I can be a professional person. I worked in retail, so I know that clients are important, and being professional is important. And I know that a lot of people will assume that I'm not a professional person because of the way that I speak, but I can turn it on and off just like any other adult. I'm just very open about it online.
Yeah, so you have to make a little bit more of an effort than most people to kind of prove that to people.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing too is that there's swearing everywhere now. I don't know what PG-13 is or anything, like what the actual
ratings.
Yeah, like what needs to be what, but there's swear words in a lot of music now, and in a lot of television and movies and on Netflix, and it doesn't bother people there to listen to it, or maybe it does, I don't know. But then I feel like when it comes to somebody who's trying to be a professional person, it can give you, like, it can put a bad taste in people's mouths. Mouths? Yeah, mouths. It's a weird plural word.
Mouths.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
And then again, that brings me to another point, that I might lose or not gain certain followers. So I'm sure there's been, I don't know how many people I've lost just because of the way that I speak, or the people who've come across my work and seen the way that I speak and then choose not to follow me, or whatever it is. So that's kind of a risk, but also turns into a benefit, because I don't necessarily want those followers either, if they're gonna judge me for that.
Yeah, you hear a lot of like in the business world, in the online marketing world, about like culling your list, which usually applies to email marketing, where you only want people who are actually going to engage with your emails, because otherwise you're paying for those subscribers. But in the Instagram world, it's like, it's kind of a catch-22, because the more followers you have, the more like clout you have on Instagram, but the more likelihood that majority of them aren't going to engage with your stuff. So I know you and I have had this conversation before, but I feel like having 15,000 really raving fans, which you do, versus having 160,000, but only 15,000 of them are raving fans. Like, it's the same thing. It just looks different with that number beside your name. And it actually kind of works against you and the Instagram algorithm if you have all these followers that really aren't paying attention to you. Yeah. So it can be a huge benefit. And I hope that's encouraging to people who are at a smaller number of followers. Plus, you have the ability to engage with more of them yourself, which
I try my best to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I hope that's encouraging to people, because it can be a con, but it can also be a huge pro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of people kind of stress about follow count, myself included. Like, I know exactly how many followers I have, and I just like upped a number recently. It was a nice little surprise, but, engagement and like I'd rather have same thing, like, you know, the expression, like, people who have 100 friends but no close friends. I'd rather have like really good friends instead of a ton of friends. So it's kind of given me that I'm weeding out the people who might not enjoy my work and my rants as much.
I feel like the number of followers is more of like a social proof thing. Like, you want to prove to other people.
100%.
It's more proving to other people that you have all these people. It's not proving to yourself that your work has value, you know, because it actually makes you feel a lot shittier when you have 160,000 followers and you post something and only get like 100 likes.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you have a far fewer number of followers and it's still 100 people liked my work, but it's a very different feeling when 100 of 160,000 versus 100 of 200, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's when the analytics, that's a whole other thing, but that's when analytics come into play, where I think a lot of people get hung up on a follow count and they should be looking at likes and comments instead. And the value of the comments, the types of comments.
Yeah. Okay, what's con number 3? We're at 3, right?
3.5.
Okay.
This being the half that you're gonna upset your aunts. So every time that my dad speaks to my aunts who do follow me on Instagram, they're like, Marie-André, you're doing really good work, but I'd like it if you stop swearing so much. And so I get a lot of those phone calls. And I've had people who message me directly, kind of being like, you know, you shouldn't be posting this on your professional page. I won't say it because it's one of the bad words, but I shared something that had the bad C word on it.
I think we all know what it is.
Yeah, see you next Tuesday. I shared something, it was like a post, but that was the photo that came up as it was like a BuzzFeed article or something like that had the C word on it. And so I got some like, you know, you shouldn't share that on your professional page. I didn't know that it'd be that photo.
People just like, a lot of people, especially in the older generation, just don't understand that you're really doing that on purpose and as part of your brand. So it's hard, but it's definitely, I can say that I have struggled with, like, you can have a ton of followers, but the ones when you're posting something, the ones you think about are your friends and family that are going to see this. And that goes both ways too. Like, if you post something, like going back to being authentic, I think more about when I post my captions and stuff. And I think like, are my friends going to know that I'm being sort of fake here? Or like, you know, and that kind of reminds me not to be fake at all. I'm like, though the people who really know me will know if I'm being fake or if I'm not.
I've wondered that too. Because I know like sometimes I'm very excited on Instagram to share whatever it is. And I have bad days too where I'm not super hyped up and full of energy. So then I worry, I have the same types of worries that, you know, because I'm perceived a certain way online that I should be like that all the time, but I'm human. So I'm going to have ups and downs like anyone else.
And you do a good job of posting and being real about those too. Like when your kid pees in your bed and stuff like that.
Oh, it happened again recently. Yeah, it sucks. Waking up soaked with somebody else's urine, like that's a shitty way to wake up.
Oh my god, it's so funny though to watch.
Thanks.
Were there any other cons?
Yeah, so I might not be considered for certain jobs and lose clients. So it has happened in the past where there's two circumstances that stand out. One being that I have a friend who works for a pretty big company, and they hired an artist to do something, and I was like, hey, I know you work for them. Do you know somebody in the events that might want to, you can throw my name in one day if they need an artist for something? And she straight up told me, she's like, they're not going to hire you because of the way that you speak online. So that was a gut punch, because that it's not my art, it's me who's being declined for that kind of job. So, and it bothers me that people can't look past personality for that, but it's business. And I've also lost a client once where I had 2 bookings with them. I did the first one and then posted about it, and then they canceled the other one on me. And it was because of the way that I captioned my post. And the thing is, it wasn't necessarily for swearing. I said crap in it, which isn't the worst of the swear words, but it was there. And I was being very true to the circumstance in saying that I'd never done this kind of job before. And they didn't like that I was making it look like I wasn't fit for it. I guess, like, I'm assuming that that's what they thought, that I made it look like I wasn't a professional, but I just meant that I hadn't done anything in that setting before. But they didn't like that, so they canceled on me for the next job, and I lost it.
Which is a tough situation because your followers probably really appreciated that honesty.
Yeah.
And
at that time, it was actually my most liked photo. And it was like about 2 years ago, but it was my most liked and most captioned photo at the time. So I knew that I was getting like good engagement. People were like proud of me. And I was proud of sharing this accomplishment, but they didn't see it that way.
yeah, that's a tough one because like I said, your followers appreciated it, but I can also see where the company was coming from. And it's tough because they should have done their research and understood that they were hiring you and not somebody who does that exact job for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And should have appreciated the art and not necessarily, the story behind it. If you got the job done, you got the job done. If they liked it.
They actually hired me, like I did the first one and I wasn't hired for both at first, and they asked me to do the second one. So they met me, they knew what I was able to do, and then they hired me, but it was the post that ended up turning them off in the end.
Yeah, which is,
and I lost a lot of money. That was a good job. So I was like, that was a circumstance where I was really upset with myself, and I kind of felt like I had to reevaluate what I was doing. And of course, my parents, who are very against me swearing online. Actually, when I told my dad what the title of this interview was, he's like smiling, and then I said like the F-bomb stick, and he's like, he just like lost. He's like, I prefer when you don't swear online.
Well, I think this might be a good opportunity to tell a story about my dad.
Yeah.
So when Mabz met my dad, I was having a going away party before Ryan and I went on our big traveling tour. And so my dad, it was at a bar, and Mabz was dressed very casually and came, I can't remember what the t-shirt.
It was the Canadian as fuck t-shirt.
Okay, yeah. So her t-shirt said that on it. And she walked up and I was standing with my dad and I said, "Dad, this is Mabz." And he looked at her shirt, read her shirt, didn't acknowledge her, turned to me and went, "She has curse words on her t-shirt."
I was like, oh, this is not the best first impression of.
And my dad has a very good sense of humor, but he's never been one for curse words. That's just never been a thing.
It was just funny because he was like facing me and just like just like turned away from me, like, is this girl serious right now?
Oh my god.
You should tell him that next time I meet him, I just ordered one that says polite as fuck, but it's like massive letters. I don't, also, just before parents get upset, I don't wear this clothes. Also, my kids are 5 and 3, they can't read, but I also don't wear swear word t-shirts around my children.
Or like to parent teacher interviews or anything.
Nope.
Like that. Yeah.
No. I did accidentally wear my Canadian as fuck t-shirt once, but kept my coat on for something because I was like,
yeah. See, you do know how to read the crowd.
Exactly. Yeah. This is not when your dad's around.
Okay, so I think we've talked a lot about authenticity and all that stuff, but the other half of this conversation is the collaboration side. And I think that that kind of goes hand in hand with things that you have done really well on Instagram. You're really good at making connections with people. And if anybody hasn't noticed, every time you look at someone's Instagram post, it's like Mabz commented and is being truly like helpful and nice on people's posts, which we're going to get into. But I think that it's another important piece to growing an audience on Instagram. So I think we should talk about that next.
Yeah. So collaborations. The thing that I've kind of done the most is making connections in the area. So I do attend the Rising Tide Society. That's been a big plus in my professional career. But I've also not shied away from reaching out to people. I've straight up it's funny because I did a post about this and I know that I've done it where people are just like, hey, what pen is that? Or they don't say, hey, they're just like, what pen is that? And I know that I've done that in the past, but
when you didn't know better.
When I didn't know better, yeah. And I also, same thing, I didn't really think about the person behind the account. But I've never shied away from reaching out to people and just being like, hey, I came across your work and I really like it and maybe we can collaborate one day. Or I want to get into a lot more murals, and so I have reached out to muralists in the area being like, hey, if you have a project and you just need like an assistant, I'd love to come and learn. And to be honest, I've never gotten any responses from those people. And I understand that Ottawa is not a big place and not everybody has the community over competition mentality in mind. And that's their right. They don't need to be nice to me for no reason. But reaching out to people and being true about the intentions. And I straight up said, like, I want to learn from you because I want to, start doing these for myself. So don't be fake and don't try to weasel your way. Don't take advantage of people. But collaborations, yeah, just don't be shy. Tell them.
I wanted to say kind of two things on that. One is that I think it's a lot easier for people once they have a lot of followers to do that kind of thing, because you feel like you're a little bit more on an more even playing field. Yeah, definitely more. But a lot of people right at the beginning could really benefit from that and are terrified to do it because they're worried that the person's going to think that they're taking advantage of them or, just trying to get free help. So, and you just touched on it a little bit, but could you elaborate a little more on how you would go about doing that? Like how you did go about doing that at the beginning when you didn't want people to think you were just taking advantage of them?
Yeah. So it's not like I have an example, and I'd like to say that I was polite. Who knows? I could have been an asshole the whole time.
Well, I have an example because you did it to me.
Yeah. Which is so embarrassing because we are friends now.
But also like you wouldn't be here if you hadn't done that.
That's true. We can thank me for our friendship. No, but I've reached out either on Instagram or email, usually Instagram because I feel like it's a lot more flexible. It's not as like, what's the word?
It's a little more casual.
Yeah, casual. And just been like, hey, I came across your work. I also live in this area or whatever. And I'd love to maybe give you a hand sometime, or, I have a question about the materials you use or something like that. But being friendly and explaining why you want to do something and why you're looking for the information is important, because nobody wants to be taken advantage of. And it also really stings when you give somebody a hand and then they turn around and you find out that they're also a letterer or something like that. And instead of doing their research, they just got the answers from you. And you're like, I'm willing to help, but I don't like being two-timed and finding out that I'm helping you. And this kind of goes against what I just said, but I helped you just so that you can work like as a competitor in my city or something like that. Like that's always kind of a tough thing to discover.
And it's not that you would have said no if you knew they were a competitor.
No, exactly.
But they didn't say it up front. Like I think when you had first reached out to me, you said that you were interested in starting to do this kind of work. And I think really what you said in the first email was the same as what you asked the muralists was if I ever needed a hand with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And then I reached out to you. I don't think we had ever hung out properly or done any work together until the one time I texted you and I said, you said you wanted to help me. I have a job that I need like an assistant at. And you came and did that. And then we became friends. So it works. But I also knew that you wanted to do it as a business. Like it wasn't, I didn't just find that out after I had already invited you to come work with me, you know?
Mm-hmm. And what you said about the followers thing too, I kind of wonder now if I reached out to those same people now that I have a bigger following, if that would kind of like, you know, when people get verified, you know, when it like verifies people, you get the little check mark or something, but it kind of, I wonder if they would have a different perception.
Absolutely.
Willing to help me. So it kind of pisses me off though, that I'm like, you weren't willing to help then and you want to be friends now or whatever. Not that this has happened, but
it happened to me. It happened to me. I remember in the very early days, there was someone I looked up to and I approached her very respectfully, like asking her, you know, if she had any recommendations for things she learned or books she read or, you know, anything like that. She read it, never answered me. And this, like, I think she had maybe 1,000 followers or something. Like looking back on it now, I thought she was like crazy huge and, you know, important. She never answered me. And then I think it was maybe 6 months later, I had a ton of followers and she finally answered the message. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wasn't me,
like, yeah, but so it's kind of weird. And as much as it sucks, you have to think at the very beginning when you're approaching people, you want to, I can't remember where I heard this, but it was someone was talking about trying to approach people that are like, if you're a step 1, they're maybe like a step between 1 and 5, but you don't try and like jump from a step 1 to a step 10 and become friends with that person right away. You know, you try and work with people who are a couple steps ahead of you as opposed to like someone who could be a mentor. And if they could be a mentor, then maybe consider paying them to be a mentor. You know what I mean? Like it's not always appropriate to just do a collaboration. And from the perspective of someone with a huge following, like that person probably wouldn't want to collaborate, you know, with me.
I know.
And it's not necessarily worth their time, which is crappy to say, but it's just true. Like they have a lot of competing things to do. So don't, at the very beginning, when you're approaching people, try and think and be realistic, and also try to not be super upset when they might not come back to you, because realistically that's just how it is.
Busy too. I'm really bad at reading something and then getting distracted. I have 2 kids, and so somebody pisses somewhere and I need to go and deal with that, but I've left the message on read and then people think I'm just some asshole who's not answering them. So life happens. And so it's not necessarily, I'm the kind of person who will place scenarios in my head and I worry a lot. But that's not necessarily what's going on in the other person's mind. So feel free to follow up even and be like, hey, I saw that you read my message, but I wondered if you had time to answer or whatever it is.
Would you have any other advice for people who are like literally just paralyzed by the thought of sending a message to somebody and wondering like, what if they don't like me? What if they're offended by this? Like just scared to do it.
The worst thing that can happen is they don't answer you or they say no, and then you move on. Somebody gave me some good advice that had to do with sending out inquiry or quotes. I get really nervous anytime I send out a quote because I'm like, oh, what if they think it's too expensive and whatever, they tell me they've hired somebody else or whatever it is. And somebody gave me some good advice to send it and then pretend it never happened, so that if they do respond, then you'll be happily surprised. And if they don't, then you've already forgotten about it and moved on. So kind of trying to keep that in mind has been helpful for me.
It's true.
Else that relates to this.
Yeah, it's true. I actually do that too. Like if I get a request for a quote, I send the quote and then I delete the email. And I mean, some people would say to save that email in a folder or whatever, but I can always go retrieve it from my deleted mail if I need to. I just delete it so that I don't get the Gmail follow-up reminder saying like, you haven't heard back from this person. Like, that's fine. If I'm not going to hear back from them, like that, you know, it's just not going to work out.
Yeah. I have to look at my notes though, because I had another point and something that could be beneficial. So this is the thing. You can be authentic, but you're also a business person. So I've liked to in my head, and I believe it to be true, in order to be supported locally, you also have to support local. So if I want to be supported by my community, then I also have to be supportive of them. So engaging in their content and liking their things and reading their blogs and leaving comments or whatever it is, it serves them, but it also serves you in return. So it's not that you need to be fake, but being a nice person will come back and help you out in the long run.
Even if you are secretly super jealous of that person and mad that you didn't get that job and they did.
Yeah. So Becca and my whole relationship, I've shared this though, but I fully was upset. Not upset. I wanted Becca's life for a long time. And I wanted, like, I was jealous that you had all these followers and all this stuff, and you weren't following me. So I took that personally. And our relationship, I'm going to rant for a second. And it's, I'm really bad. I took my ADD meds, but I'm also really excited. And I think that excitement kind of overrides meds. I don't know how scientific that is, but I think it's true. I come from a really small town where there's only so many people who do so many things. So I grew up believing in competition and that you had to be better than other people in order to get jobs and things like that. It's just the way that was, because there were no choices. There was A or B, and whichever one was better got the job or whatever it was. So this whole community over competition ideology is very new to me, and it's something that's had to be learned. It's not like I've always been this super I've always been friendly and stuff, but I've always had jealousy, and I still have jealousy, and that's something that I've had to kind of change the way that I think about it. And so in learning to be supportive of other people who are doing the same thing as me in the same areas as me, I know will in the long run help me as well. So it's being supportive, but I'm not stupid. I know that it's going to help me out in the long run. Believe in karma. Except for when bad things happen to me, then I'm like, shit, what did I do for this?
But it's not disingenuous to leave a comment and be supportive, even if you secretly feel jealous. Like, you know that person still did a really good job.
Yeah.
Like that mirror, your mirror looks amazing when deep in the pit of your stomach, you're like, why the hell didn't I get that mirror job? And I've told you this before, but that never goes away. Like you do, you're constantly telling me like, oh my God, you keep getting all these jobs. Why do you get, and I'm like, Mabz, every time you post a story about like you're doing a mural at a bar, I'm like, why didn't I get that mural at a bar? Why didn't they ask me? It never goes away. It's not something that goes away when you magically have more followers or,
it just goes to show that followers is not the end all of anything.
Not at all. And in fact,
insecurities are always insecurities.
And this is like a total side note. But I think you and I have also talked about the fact that once you get a certain number of followers, I think people stop approaching you because they assume that you're too busy. And Peggy Dean actually did a post the other day on Instagram about this, and I like couldn't do more of the praise emoji,
I think I saw it.
Yeah, she was talking about that exact thing. People assume that you're too busy or that you're going to be too expensive, and so they don't approach you. So it's actually, first of all, it's encouraging for beginners, especially when you're trying to get clients and stuff like that, because the majority of people are going to go to they'll look at who has the most jobs and who has the most followers and who seems to be doing the best in their business. And then they'll go, they're probably too expensive. And realistically, like I do that. I do that with so many different things, like hair salons or restaurants, or, think of anything where people leave reviews. You're going to go to the most expensive one and be like, I'd be just as happy with the one underneath them, So the person at the top is not actually getting the clients or making as much money as you think they are. And that can be really, really challenging.
I can't believe, like, my first summer of doing weddings, I was so blown away with the amount of work that I got and people were referring me. And so I assumed that last summer, so this would have been 2 summers ago, I assumed that last summer would be a really great year. And I had hardly any wedding clients, and it killed me. And I know a lot of people in the wedding industry. So I kind of started wondering like what what am I doing wrong that I'm not being suggested for these types of jobs or anything. Or people, again, I like to think that they just assume that I'm too busy, or they assume that I'm too expensive. But I've been finding the same thing a lot for like styled shoots and things like that, that people aren't asking me anymore. And it's not, I'm not as busy as you think I am. Having so many followers doesn't mean that you're getting all of these jobs or making all of this money or anything like that. It's people's real life is not always what it seems. As genuine and as authentic as I try to be, there's still some things that I keep for my own privacy and my own sanity that I don't want everybody knowing. But I think it's an easy way out that people just assume like, oh, they've got a big following or a larger following than this person, then so I'll ask the other one.
Yeah. And I want that to be encouraging for people that are listening who are just breaking into the market or like have a lot of competition in their area, because it can be a benefit. But I also want to bring it back to how to combat that. Like for you and I, for example, we're both saying that we're getting less and less jobs. The way you combat that, however you want to, wherever you put the emphasis on the syllable.
So, did you just say syllable? Was that on purpose?
Yes.
Syllable.
I said emphasis on syllable. Like
You're making a joke. Oh, thank God.
And you know what? That's
over.
That's like a super my dad joke. My dad always made that joke. But the way that you get over that is to keep up with your community over competition and your engagement and your collaborations. And so like letting people know that you still want to do those jobs and that you're not above them, and that, you know, you're still able to work with them and stuff like that. And the only way you're going to do that is by all the things we talked about earlier in this conversation.
Yeah.
So it all comes full circle.
Like that first summer, I got so many jobs, and I know, like, I also had, I don't know how many followers I would have had at that point, but a lot less than I have now. So it definitely gave me the boost that I needed. It got me the jobs that I needed. It's just kind of shitty that it dwindled after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something I'm still working at figuring out.
Yeah. I can't remember if there was anything else that we specifically wanted to touch on, but I think that this has already been like, I think this will be a very encouraging conversation for people. And yeah. Yeah.
And if not, fuck off. Not actually.
Don't
actually.
Check. Well, thanks so much, Mabz, for coming on and talking about this. And I think you'll probably get some new followers out of it who appreciate your fucks.
Maybe, hopefully. And also thank you, Becca, for letting me film inside your house, one floor down, because my kids are much too loud. So Becca and I are in the same house right now. This is funny. We could be side by side, but we're pretending not to be. We're having an inauthentic, like fake, different place.
This is very inauthentic.
But thank you. Thank you for being a good friend.
I'm surprised you're not up here giving me a hug right now on camera.
I could just like, oh, it could be like a movie moment. Okay, we're doing it.
I should have known that she was gonna announce to all of you that this was all in my house. I can hear her running up my stairs right now.
Funny if we didn't tell anyone though, and I was just like, hey, I'm over here.
Oh, cute. This is really what actually happens. Like every time she comes over, I'll be sitting here and she just hugs me for a little while.
Or I tuck you into bed before I leave.
Okay, wave at the camera now. Let's say bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.